Welcome everyone to our WSA presentation of Victoria Hilt doing Strengthening Families. She will introduce the subject of this, but before we started, I wanted to let you know a few things. One is that I'm going to mute everyone. In order to unmute yourself, you either need to go into the corner of your screen, probably where there is a microphone, or *6 on your phone, or if you hit the participants button, you will see everybody and you can mute or unmute yourself from there as well. I also wanted to let you guys know that we have a couple of things coming up. We are trying to set up meetups, so opportunities for staff to get together and talk to each other since you are isolated out in your world. And I think we're going to do this for parents also. And so I've set a few of those up on the Facebook, and you'll get a follow-up email from this in the next day where it'll have links to our whole schedule of webinars and other events. And then before we start, I think I want to do a couple of polls so that we can see who is out there today. Can you guys see this poll? I think some of you can. And for Maricela, it's whether you're a parent, a staff, a director, or an other. We have a lot of staff on the call today. All right, I'm going to close it. And you can see that we have 90% staff on this call, but this call is suitable for staff or parents, so don't be afraid if you're one or the other.
Nearly 3,000 lenders have already made.
All right, and then I am going to mute you guys again because I think somebody joined us again. And Victoria, would you like to get started?
Sure, I can get started. So my name is Victoria Hilt, and I'm a certified trainer with the Children's Trust Fund Alliance with the Strengthening Families Protective Factors. And the whole goal is to bring it to life in your work. I really strive to make it relevant to bring it to life for you wherever you are. So that might be your work or your daily life as a parent or both. A community member. So that is my goal. First, I want to start out by just letting you know that April is a special month where the Children's Trust Fund Alliance and others recognize and elevate the reality of preventing child abuse and neglect. So this is actually Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. The Alliance National Parent Partnership Council has developed several tools to promote the protective factors during this time. And while we were creating these tools, we considered the current situation with COVID-19, and we actually made some tools that are specific to the virus that's going around and the changes that we've had to make in our lives as a result. So I'm just getting ready to bring up my screen here. Maybe. Nope. Sorry, it looks like it's breaking. I don't know why.
I've been having all kinds of issues with connectivity today. I think now that everybody is working from home,
Yeah.
your Wi-Fi 24/7, it's substantially more difficult to get things to work.
Yay. Okay. Maybe. No. Doesn't work either. Okay. Well, that's something. Maybe I'll just share it from here. So we created some tools, and this is the website to find those tools. And they are really to help create conversations in your community, wherever that is, whatever it looks like, virtually. And there's some questions to consider, and we're actually going to bring some up today that I would like to show for you. We're also doing a social media campaign. So we have made some memes that really address the protective factors that you can share online with whatever social media that you need. And I actually want to show you where that is right now. If I can get everything to work the way it's supposed to. It's funny because even though I tried this all before, it's not working for me now, but I guess that's technology for you. So the main site is the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, and at the top of the page, there's something that says Parent Voice. And if you click on that, it takes you to a page that's all about the parent voice and about April being Child Abuse Prevention Month. If you continue to scroll down, you'll actually see the social media campaign that's being done. There, for each week, we're going to highlight a protective factor, and there will be a picture that you can download, as well as content that you can copy and share. If you have trouble with it, there's a step-by-step video that we made that can walk you through how to share the information. Is anybody else having any technical problems?
Hey, this is Marisela, Victoria. Can
Yeah.
you let me know? So I just get into the website, and then which one did you try to pull?
So if you go to the website, which is the ctfalliance.org, there is an option that says Parent Voice up at the top.
Oh yeah, thank you.
And if you click that, it'll take you where you need to go.
Okay.
So if you wanted to participate, that is something that we all can do to be a part of this prevention effort. So I just wanted to highlight that. Today, what we're actually going to be talking about in depth is concrete support in times of need. And this is a protective factor that Katie and I talked about and we discussed would be kind of pivotal given the times that we're in to bring up and to go over with you. I want to bring up this slide where you can see the 5 protective factors again, because it's good to remember with your fingers which one we're going over. And I wish the slideshow was working, but it's not, and that's okay. We'll just adapt and overcome. But concrete support in times of need is your pinky, because it's the smallest finger, and it reminds us that we all need help sometimes. So when you're trying to explain concrete support in times of need, you can use that as an example. And the reason we do this is because every family at some point needs help. Every family. It might be when a child is struck with a serious illness, or a parent loses a job, a family moves to a new community, they have a new baby, or, for example, right now, the world is dealing with a pandemic. These are stressful times. Sometimes the challenges are minor and may not affect our daily life. Other times they are critical to a family's survival and ability to adapt. No matter what level of need or help from relatives, friends, organizations, churches, a variety of other sources, these can all be a lifeline for a family in need.
Veronica?
Victoria, but yes?
Victoria, sorry. I'm having trouble trying to log into where you guys are at.
The CTF Alliance?
Yes.
Okay. So if you go to the parent voice at the top, it should take you to this screen.
Sorry, you guys.
We'll send this link out afterwards so you guys can access it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure you get it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No worries. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint. So the essential elements and goals that we're going to cover today really are about the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework, which we kind of covered last week. So just the basic idea that strengthening families can be used by building protective factors up, and that we can all do everyday actions that will help us support the families that we work with or maybe that we see. We also want to make sure we acknowledge the importance of culture and how it impacts families as they seek to build their protective factors, and maybe how we might actually individually feel, act, or think as a result of our own culture. And then, of course, the important role that parents play in strengthening families, because they are the people who are the experts of their own lives. So, excuse me, the Annie E. Casey Foundation defines successful families as those who have their basic needs met. They have economic security, housing, healthcare, and other numerous resources in place. They also have some form of education or skill and are connected to families, neighbors, coworkers, or friends. So this is the definition of a family that's having their basic needs met. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I know some families like that, but not all families are like that. So I think it's important that when we're talking about building strong protective factors, that we really think about what that means to us. If we help families find and access these essential sources of help, we will be building protective factors against stress and in turn increasing the protective factors of children. So in the protective factors framework, concrete support in times of need means that families have access to whatever they need to handle the changes they face and to be successful. So depending upon a family's resources, which can be financial or assets or skills, some may be able to access support and others may not. When families don't have access, we can all help them get it by providing support or getting them in contact with those who provide that resource. So one of the things that things that we need to kind of address in the beginning, if we're talking about protective factors and how we help families, is that it's difficult sometimes to ask for help. especially if we're used to giving it. And there's a video that I would normally play if I was doing this training in a face-to-face, mostly because in a face-to-face situation, if you have a reaction to this video, we can talk about it face-to-face. Because there's quite a few of you on the call, I'm not going to play the video because sometimes it can trigger certain things within us, but I do suggest that you watch it. So it's a little clip from an episode of Oprah, and it's with Brene Brown. And if you search on Google for, "Are you comfortable asking for help?" that will bring it up. And it is a good few minutes, and I would encourage you to watch it and really consider how it impacts you and maybe how you feel about it. I think it's a really healthy practice. So I encourage you to look that up. But because we are not face-to-face, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to actually just read you a story. And while I'm reading it to you, you can look at the slide that's on the screen and maybe think about how that could potentially be happening in your own community. So this story is about a woman named Jessie. She was a member of the Alliance's National Parent Partnership Council, and she participated in the creation of this training. And this is her story about giving and receiving support. And these are her own words, so I'm going to read them exactly as they are. "I would like to share my story of how I have always been the person in the community that everybody came to for resources, to help. And I was the person that helped everybody. Everybody knew to come to me for help, and I was just always that person there. And so at a time in my life when I got to the point where my utilities were turned off in the wintertime and I had to ask for help, I asked a friend of mine, one of the families I was helping, if my kids could come over and stay at her house overnight until my power was back on. And I feel like, I'm going to take a break from reading her words, but I feel like this is a very relatable situation for many people. You're in a situation and you're not used to being the one to ask for help, so you ask, "Oh, can you help me with this like tiny piece of it, this tiny piece of it." But really it's a big piece, it's a huge piece. And I think that it's really hard to do something like that. It's really hard to ask for help. So I'm going to go back to Jessie's words. "I was just so used to just giving to people. And the reason I sent my kids and I didn't go was that she was disabled and she had a small trailer. And I felt like that my kids would be better there and I could stay at home. It wouldn't impact her as much. And it made me think about how I have given so much. And I was not used to receiving or asking for help. And also, I think that the joys that she gave me in saying, 'Of course you can. Why don't you come too?' And it made me know that she felt really good about being able to help. And so for me, it made me stop and think that I'm not always the person in the community that people have to go to. And I'm not always the person in the community that has to give, that I can receive too. But that felt kind of a little uncomfortable because then when you're not used to receiving, you don't stop to think about the same things that happen to you. So what was really unique about it is that it made me stop, think, and realize that people want to give. You don't always have to give, and you can give them a chance to give back to you. So while I was reading that, I hope that you were looking at the slide and reading the questions that are here to kind of make you start thinking, right? Thinking about the concrete supports in your community. Jessie said that she was usually the one helping others. How do you think she felt when the tables were turned and she found herself having to ask for help? I see a few cameras. I don't know if everybody has them or not, but I imagine that there's probably a lot of heads shaking because it is hard to ask for help if you're used to giving it. Or not shaking, nodding. Heads nodding because it's hard. And it makes us feel a little uncomfortable. Like Jessie said, she acknowledged that. It was really uncomfortable. So I want to share something with you, and I will in a little bit, but what I think is important is that we recognize that anybody can be a concrete support, and anyone can be a gateway to concrete supports in their community. So you yourself may be a concrete support to someone, but you may also be the person who says, I know where you can go to get help with that. So the story is really intended to help us see that giving and receiving support create different responses, and understanding that others may want to or like to help, but they may not realize the help that they can offer. So that's the other piece that I want to make sure that we acknowledge and give a little bit of space, is that we tend to place weight on what we can do, right? Well, I can't help that much. There's not much I can do. And that happens a lot. It's a very human reaction, I think. Well, I don't have anything to give. I want to give, but I don't know what to give. And the reality is that we all do have something to give, and we all can help with little steps. And I think that the pandemic that we're in right now, I think it's really important to recognize that we all play a part in this. You know, I mean, we're being told to wash our hands and consider others when we go shopping and many other things. And I think it's important to recognize that we all play a part in making sure our neighbors and our community are safe and healthy. So those who offer support to families can be many sizes. They can be organizations, they can be teachers, they can be staff, they can be people. But whatever it is, each provider or person that becomes a gateway to services that families need and enable them to experience less stress and a greater sense of empowerment, then it exponentially helps the family. Families who encounter a wide variety of needs, they may experience that no one person or one organization can help them. So it's a whole network, which really speaks to us as people individually right now. Again, with the pandemic, we're a network and we all have to help each other. So perhaps I have different needs than somebody else, or I have multiple needs. The reality is I can go to multiple different places and get help as long as I know about them. But if you don't know about something, you don't know about it. I really want to make sure that that sinks in. You only know what you know. So if you don't know that a resource is available, you don't know that you can access it. And then we get to the part where it's difficult to access resources because maybe I just don't need it that badly. I'm sure someone else needs it more. And these are things that we tell ourselves. But at a time like this, I think that we really need to kind of take a step back. And this is where like culture comes in, right? So any type of community, any type of person and their culture, we have to look at what's holding me back from asking for help. At this time where help is so important and we're only going to get by with each other, what is holding me back from asking for help? And what's holding me back from possibly giving help? Am I afraid? Am I afraid that my family will get sick, so I'm afraid to leave the house? I think that's a very real feeling right now. And that's okay. But I think recognizing that, identifying it, and just kind of realizing that that's a thing. Sorry, that was my daughter. She's excited about her colored pencil. So if we know about these services that are available to us, then we can help others reach them. So I would encourage you to kind of start thinking about who is the community hub where all of these resources can be found. And I know that there's like 211, which is a pretty good resource, and a lot of communities have that. But a lot of communities also have community action agencies where they have multiple services all grouped into one. And I think most family development specialists and other positions and Head Start programs and ECAP programs, I think they know a lot of these programs and services in your area, but the key is linking it so that multiple needs can be met regardless of the situation. So again, we're talking about coming together as a network. Now, I also want to say and just kind of highlight that families face multiple stressors every day. So sometimes it's a common thing, just getting up in the morning and having your kids get up with you on time. That could be a stressor. And then it goes all the way to the other side of the scale where maybe there's, you know, community violence, domestic violence, illness, depression, poverty. And I want to make sure it's clear that, you know, poverty is not linked to necessarily a negative, but there is a strong connection between child development and child maltreatment to those who are never or who exist in poverty. So it's not poverty causes child issues, but that it seems to happen in that same area quite often. But there can be a lot of stressors, and some of them are easier to address and some of them are harder. And so if you are connecting families to resources, make sure that you're not doing it alone, because again, that network makes that ability to continue to function stronger. And then we also have that ability to build up ourselves when we're working with families, because it can get really taxing on a person who's always giving to give and not have a way to fill their own cup, so to speak. So families have multiple stressors, and you probably belong to a family too. Regardless of what it looks like, your family's going to have stressors as well. And again, this goes back to this pandemic that we're in and what we're experiencing as a community, as a nation, as a country, as a planet. So when we think about this protective factor, in terms of the framework, and I kind of brought this up last week. I'm going to go over it real quickly for anybody who might not have been there last week. But the idea for this framework is that when state, system, agency, and programs build up these core functions of building parent partnerships, deepening our knowledge and understanding, shifting our practice and our policy and systems, and ensuring accountability, there's a domino effect that results in strengthened families, optimal child development, and reduced likelihood of child abuse and neglect. And within that, there are everyday actions and program practices that we can take on to help those families. So the Center for the Study of Social Policy identified the following everyday activities that help support the concrete support in times of need protective factor. So if you respond immediately when a family is in crisis, and you provide information and warm connections to other services in the community, and you help families to develop skills and tools they need to even identify what their needs are and connect them to the appropriate supports, then it ends with that result of strengthened families, optimal child development, and reduced likelihood of child abuse and neglect. So when we look at strategies or everyday actions, we need to consider what that is. A strategy is a careful plan or method for achieving a particular goal, usually over a long period of time. What I would like us to do is just take a moment or two to consider what actions we can take to provide concrete support in times of need, especially these current times of need. When you're doing that, consider that they can be small but significant concrete steps. So the things that we do every day that may seem small by themselves, but in turn have a larger impact. That's what we really want to think about right now. So normally if I was doing this face-to-face, I would give you this sheet and a handout. And basically what it is an opportunity to reflect on your work with families and consider how you can respond immediately when families are in crisis. So if you're a parent or if you're a community member and someone comes to you with a crisis, what is your first action? What are you looking to do first? And how are you going to respond immediately in a way that helps build this concrete support? Perhaps it's providing information and connections to other services in the community. How do you do that? What does that look like for you? How do you help families develop skills and tools? So these protective factors are built into the model of Head Start and ECAP. We talk about them all the time. But when we really break it down into these small but significant steps, I think that you'll agree with me that it's very apparent that we have everyday things that we do that we can continue to do and amplify, and they may have a larger impact in our community, especially at a time such as this. So we have this picture that we share that is a picture of a bridge. And the idea behind this picture is that we are the bridge. When we know our community and we link families to services and we're respecting that family culture and maybe recognizing why a family may or may not ask for help, then we become the bridge between a family and the services, and we build those strong protective factors. So I want to just kind of let that sit for a minute. Normally I would let it sit for a lot longer, but if you want to, in the chat box that's part of the Zoom feature, you can type in maybe some concrete things that you do every day. Maybe some things that are everyday option or everyday actions that are small and significant that you feel like you can commit to in the future. Anything like that. So if you have the ability to, please put that into the Zoom chat. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and continue on a little bit, because I just want to make sure that we address knowing your community and knowing what resources you might look for. I do have in the chat box, it says return phone calls or emails from families as a priority. Prioritizing families and people over papers. So maybe over paperwork. When we know our community, we know where the food banks are, we know where medical services are available at, mental and behavioral health options. I know somebody on my social media shared our local crisis line during this time because a lot of people are alone and it's hard to be alone. Maintaining a relationship with my families, contacting them weekly and trying to have a real relationship, not just checking a box. I love that. Maintaining text encouragement. Yes, texting is fun. It helps us. I keep in contact with parents who reach out to me and provide assistance when I can. So additional things that we might need to know: housing services, transportation during this time, the local religious resources, so a clergy maybe. And it's not to say that you know, you're promoting a religion necessarily if that's not allowed in your work, but I think what that means is if a family is looking for a church or they're looking for a group that meets, you can help them find a place to find that, right? You're supporting the family and reaching their goals. And I know a lot of churches have recently changed their mass to virtual so that parents or families can participate, or, you know, individuals can participate. I have a couple more chats here. Provide families opportunities to learn about child development and information, as well as phone calls and relationships with weekly contacts. Being open to chatting with parents about all kinds of things. Sometimes they just need someone to listen, and adult interactions. That's important. And remember, again, I want to highlight that some families feel really uncomfortable asking for help. Sometimes culture can be a piece of that, maybe a culture referring to age, gender, sexual orientation, religion, community attitudes. That can be a factor. And so when we're working with families, we need to make sure that we start by asking questions and listening to what they're truly saying, so we have the right cues to help them get the support that they're really looking for and that they would be comfortable with. So making sure that we're connected to our community in that way, seeing if you can connect them with providers that work within their cultural community, or maybe talking to them about their experience with other providers and helping them understand that maybe other providers and these new resources are not the same. And so their relationship or the approaches may be different. So they may actually get the help that they're looking for. So these are important things to consider. I do want to show you something that happened in my local area. So I live in Bremerton in Washington, and my local food bank posted this story. They are really encouraging people to use their services right now, and that they're still open, and recognizing that, because people need food banks. They need assistance with food, and they want to make sure that people know that they should not be embarrassed, especially at a time like this where families, they're normally employed. Parents are not employed anymore. Maybe they went, maybe they got a lot of food from the grocery store, but now they're on food stamps. So there's this like change that's happening, and some people literally don't know how to navigate it, and they don't know that these resources are available to anyone. So this was a family that fell on hard times, and they were embarrassed when the kid went to the food bank and asked for help. And that is a cultural thing that we have to respect, but also encourage, right? So we need them to know that that is why they exist. That is their purpose. And so I would encourage you that even if you don't have social media yourself, or you're not supposed to use social media for work, try to seek out the community resources in your area and check to see if what their new hours are, what their new practices are, maybe how they're reaching people. I know this same location in my area is doing curbside service for those who have health issues that are afraid to go into the food bank, even if they are 6 feet away from someone else. So I think that right now we could really do with elevating what resources we already have. Like we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just have to connect them all and network with them. So we make sure our families are getting the help that they need. Normally at this point, I would go into like what signs to look for when we see a family that might be under stress. And so, any of these things may be a sign of stress. And all of these things can happen, but I think I want to take a minute to recognize that all of these things could be happening right now, as well as the pandemic. So I think a lot of families have these stressors, and now they have these stressors and another illness, and they're a teacher now, and their mom and their playmate, and they're everything for their children. And so these would normally be signs of a troubling situation, but I imagine most, if not all, families have some of these symptoms that they might need help right now. And some may be more comfortable than others, but I think recognizing that this particular time is a little stressful. And so these are the early warning signs of child abuse and neglect. And really, there's like 4 pieces to it: isolation of the child or the family. But again, with these times, we're all isolated. And so I think that when we stop and think about the protective factors, we really have to look at how are these going to help with this current isolation. So how can we find those concrete supports and give them to families during this time? We're intentionally isolating. So how do we address that? And please type them in to the chat box so that everyone can see. So somebody wrote, join as many local groups on social media as possible. There's an amazing sharing of resources, neighbors helping neighbors. Yes, we will be sharing the PowerPoint. So I want to kind of stop here for just another moment to kind of let it sink in that we need to build up our concrete supports right now. And some are being created as we speak. There's another group in my area. I didn't want to get too many screenshots from my Facebook, but there's another group in my area that's making food for health workers. So anybody who works in the health field, and they make food in mass. Restaurants coming together to make food to support the health personnel. And that's something that didn't exist before. So now not only are food banks encouraging more people to come in, even though they're, being worked, they're risking it, and they're working harder than ever, we're all going to be, have the potential to help others. So if you have anything else that you know of that can be a concrete support or maybe can guide someone to a concrete support, I encourage you to put it into the chat box right now. Or maybe we could even unmute someone if you have something that you want to say. You could say, Victoria, I would like to share a story, or I would like to share something. I want to make sure that we give you the space to do that. We are hosting parent support Zooms every week and regionally for parents of kids with special needs for just connecting, doing them late after 8 so kids can be in bed. So that's in Pierce County. So please look at the chat. This is our opportunity to connect and share how we're building up these concrete supports. So I'm going to switch over and ask a question. And Maricela, there isn't really a slide for this. So I'm going to just read it, and then maybe you can just translate it, if that will work for you. And one of the other things is that this training is being changed right now to adapt to the COVID situation. So as I'm training, or as I'm providing this information and resources to you guys, I'm also getting my emails and phone calls about how we're changing it. So please check out this website because they know what they are doing. And you could even potentially start parent groups and lead them through this conversation as well. And I'm zooming through it real quickly because I'm looking for specifically one. So something that we might want to just ask and think about when we're talking about concrete supports is, what does your community need right now? What do you need right now? So not necessarily what can you provide, but what do you need? How do you feel like you can stay informed and access the services that you need to in order to get your needs met or get your community needs met? And I think this is probably the most important question I want to ask you guys today. So essentially it is, what do you think our society will need to create a better normal in the post-COVID-19 world? And I'm just gonna kind of leave that open for you. Essentially, what are we gonna do next? Now that we've gone through this, what is our new normal going to be? And I think some people have been passing around memes that basically say like, normal wasn't working, or, you know, normal isn't here anymore, but that's a sign that normal wasn't working. So what is our new normal? Oh, and we have more in the chat. We have a guy in Tacoma who's delivering cereal to kids. PTA and churches are putting together weekend food bags to go home with children on the last lunch drop of the week. And then to still be loving and friendly. Yes, we have to physically be apart, but we still need to connect, check in with each other, support each other. I need regular conversations with others in my same or similar situations. And what are you learning about when it takes to handle a crisis? So these are reflective for you individually. I mean, if you really think about it, these are questions that we can ask families to help them recognize their strengths. How are you handling it? What are you doing? Some families tried to do a schedule and then threw it out the window because no, that just doesn't work for them. Some families have a schedule and it works great for them and they're doing wonderful. And other families are like mine, where we made a schedule, we followed it for a few days, and then we were like, no, it just doesn't work. And that's the reality, right? That's the reality of the world we live in. And that's okay. And I think asking ourselves and asking the families we work with, what are you doing during this time, can really help shift us into thinking about and building on protective factors and encouraging families to just use their innate strengths to build up the other protective factors in their life. So if they're being very emotionally supportive to their children right now, maybe we can help them by guiding them to be emotionally supportive to themselves, right? Because they also need to do that. And then also, if we're talking about that, then we also need to recognize that in recognizing and supporting their own emotional support, then we need to reach out to others and make sure that they're doing the same. And those are social connections. These are all part of the protective factor framework. They all work together. And even though the Children's Trust Fund Alliance has that social media campaign where we're pulling out protective factors each week, they all work together to build a foundation. Somebody typed, Doreen said, I need encouragement that what I'm doing is good enough and where I am is great, and reminders about the things I am doing right. That is a strength-based approach to life. And that is really what the protective factors are for and to help you do. When you focus on your strengths, then you can recognize areas of that you can improve on. And because you have these strengths in place, you can build them up and you know that you'll just keep doing what you got to do. So I'm going to stop it there. There is something I wanted to just kind of highlight, and that is what the Children's Trust Fund Alliance does. Since you're going to be going to their website, hopefully, and sharing that social media, I want to make sure you know what their purpose is and what they're supporting and that sort of thing. And then also I wanted to give you information if you have questions or if you want to do the training officially for the Protective Factors Framework, you can do that. So I included those slides as well. But if we want to just talk about and maybe answer those questions, I'm also open to that. So I'll kind of leave it up to you. If you have something you want to share, maybe unmute yourself and I can see that, and I can call on you or put it in the chat box. It's a lot of information all at once. I know that. So I want to make sure that we take the time that we need for it. I don't see anyone unmuting or anyone chatting. So I will send Katie the PowerPoint so you can really digest those questions. But I would encourage you to really think about what things that you can do every day that build on these concrete supports in time of need. And reflect on those questions that I asked. What is it that I need? What do our families need? How do we get them? What's our new normal going to look like? And how am I handling it? Because you are handling it because you're existing in it right now. So I just want to encourage everyone to reflect on that. And then are we doing parental resilience next week, Katie?
Yeah, so next week is parental resilience. So that will be the topic for next week. And then we will get you the other topics as well. We will share the PowerPoint and we're recording, so that'll be available to you or anyone else on your staff. And we're having weekly family support discussion group on Fridays at noon, and infant toddler home visitors are on Wednesday at 1, I think. So some of you might be in those categories, and we'll send all that information out as well. And Pearl is asking where you find the PowerPoints. Yes, I've been a little overwhelmed with the amount of meetings and things, and I haven't actually gotten them up onto the website yet, but Victoria will share this one with me and the Spanish one as well. And we'll get a website up that actually links to all these things.
And thank you everyone for coming.
Yes,
and
thanks
participating.
everyone.
It's fun for me, so.
Have a great day.